A lot of people are incredibly self-aware and they are still completely stuck. They've read books, they know their strengths for the most part, they understand mindset, and yet their goals feel out of reach and sometimes incredibly so. In this conversation, I'm talking with Phillip Ramos, a CliftonStrengths coach and co-founder of ANKRPoint, about why insight alone doesn't create change and what actually helps people turn awareness into momentum. We talk about the mindset shifts that unlock progress, how identity drives performance, more than people are aware, honestly, and more than even strategy, and why most people unknowingly sabotage their growth by trying to improve in the wrong direction. If you want to reach your goals in a way that actually fits who you are without forcing yourself into burnout or constant self-correction, or especially without forcing yourself into somebody who you are not, this episode will give you a new lens for how to move forward. I am really excited for this one, and I can't wait for us to dig into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Andrea Pearson Show. My name is Andrea, and I've got another guest on today. His name is Phillip Ramos. Phillip, do you want to say hi to everybody real fast?
Hello, everyone. How you guys doing? Super excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have him here too. It was funny because when I reached out into this group that we're both members of, it's called Connect Utah. It's a networking group for business owners, and it's one of my favorite groups on the face of the planet. But I reached out there and I was like, I'm going to be interviewing people on my podcast. If you want to come fill out my form, all of that. Anyway, he comes out, fills out his form, and he's like, I'm a Clifton Strengths person. I'm like, oh my gosh, my followers, they're gonna know. I'm obsessed with the Clifton Strengths personality test. It has changed my life significantly. So I was super excited to find out that Phillip is a Clifton Strengths coach. And I'm going to go ahead and read his bio, but it says Phillip Ramos is a certified Gallup Clifton Strengths coach, engagement and retention specialist, and the co-founder of ANKRPoint, a strengths-based coaching and community platform focused on identity, clarity, and sustainable performance. With a background in corporate training and human development, Phillip helps entrepreneurs, leaders, and high-performing individuals stop operating against themselves and start building their work and lives around who they actually are. His work centers on strengths awareness, identity alignment, and practical frameworks that improve engagement, decision making, and long term capacity. Phillip is known for translating complex strengths, learning into simple, actionable insights, helping people ask better questions, communicate more clearly, and create alignment in both business and relationships. His approach emphasizes awareness before action, clarity before strategy. I can read, and identity as the foundation for meaningful growth. Through ANKRPoint, Phillip leads coaching workshops and conversations designed to help people anchor into their strengths, reduce burnout, and lead with intention in everything they do. Anyway, welcome, Phillip.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
I'm really excited. It was really fun because he's like, have you taken the test? I'm like, yes, I've taken the test. He's like, what are your top five strengths? Here are mine. And I was like, wait a second. We share like three of our top five strengths. We're both woo, we're both activator, and we're both communication. And I'm like, how is life as an activator for you, Phillip?
It's wild. I would say, and this is one of the things I love about strengths in terms of we just pick activator, right?
Right.
You start to see how all of these strengths have played in your entire life, your whole life. We just didn't know how to name it, right? We didn't know how
Right.
to put our finger on what we did. So we have this, our parents or siblings or friends be like, why do you do that? Why do you do that? Why do you do that? So when you
Right.
take the test and all of a sudden it becomes aware and now you have a name to it, not just have I seen my activator do great things in my life, I'm great at, I'm the first guy to jump, right? The moment someone says, hey, we should do this, oh, I'm there, right? I'm
Right.
in, right? I'm in. I don't ask questions. That's the problem, though, is that I've realized, oh, I didn't ask enough questions. Oops, right? And so I think that that's one thing that I've learned, and I've kind of fallen in love with the strengths. A big part of it is because I've learned that part of what makes me great is also that same thing that kind of hinders me. And so I've been able to kind of look at both, learn how to manage it, learn how to grow with it. But yeah, I've loved my activator showing up and fearlessly. One of the Gallup, when you look at one of the strong suits of what activator is for yourself, fearless is one of the words that go along with it. So whenever I see that, I'm like, oh yeah,
I'm
that's
fearless. I am
I'm fearless.
fearless. And that's actually a good point. I've not studied activator nearly as much as I have like focus, because focus is it's my number one. It's like all consuming, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, like I was like, why am I this way? And activator, I learned, the activator is why I'm enthusiastic. It's why I'm like I'm like, let's do it, guys. And that positivity where you have positivity number one for
Mhm.
your strength. And I was like, when I first took the Clifton Strengths test, I was surprised that positivity was not number one. I was even offended. I was like, what the heck? Like, so why am I so happy then? Why am I so positive all the time? It's because activator and then futuristic. The future is always going to be great, right? And
Yes.
so those two together make me very, very just positive. And fear doesn't generally, I don't think about things that make me afraid. It's just
Sure.
they don't occur to me as much as they would to other people. And I didn't know that I was abnormal or not abnormal, just different from a lot of people in that way. I was just like, why are you talking about things like that? Like, that's depressing.
Yeah, right. I love that. I love that. That's one thing that I think that more people need to acknowledge. It isn't just we're not defined by the one strength, in this case, activator or focus. It's the combination of multifaceted strengths that all of a sudden you start to see this better picture of what it really is. When I took my assessment, a friend of mine said you should take the Clifton Strength Assessment, and I had taken personality assessment before, and I'm like, do I really want to do this? So finally, begrudgingly, right, I took it, and I was like, okay, well, they were fascinated with my results. I didn't understand them. Then my wife took it. They were fascinated by his results. We didn't understand it. So I shelved this thing for about 10 months. And one Sunday, I was watching this, spiritual conference, and someone said that, one of the best things we can do on this planet is to become the best version of ourselves. And right then, I had this idea of like, oh, I took that report. I'm going to go read it. And it was then that I learned. That was the first time, by the way, I read my report 10 months later. Read my whole report. Then I read my wife's. Now, up until that point, I have activator number three. My wife has activator number three. I did what most people do and made an assumption that we're the same.
Oh no.
But I have positivity and woo then activator. She has strategic futuristic and activator. Totally. And when you read that, you realize, whoa, they're two different activators. And so I love that you brought that up because we're more complex than just the single focus or the single
Right.
activator or the single theme. It's the uniqueness in where they lie at, the combination of them that really dramatically change how that actually works for us, how it drives us and motivates us.
Right. No, I love that so much. Yeah, because just knowing that my husband's number, like his strengths, like I have a friend whose top no number one is learner, and my husband's is learner as well. And I was like, "Do you just love watching documentaries?" And she was like, "No, why would I? Why?" And I was like, "Oh, not all learners are the same. Okay, I get it."
That's
But
awesome.
but okay, so tell us about your business. How and why did you start it and the whole ANKRPoint, right? Just talk to us about that.
So one of the things that so I took my assessment now, 2019. So it's something I fell in love with. After that 10 months and I finally read it, I actually immediately, the following Monday, I contacted a friend of mine who was a Gallup Certified Strengths Coach. And I was like, okay, I'm in. Tell me about how this thing works. And after that, I started coaching. I started doing different things. And it was about a year later, I got certified. And then I started corporate training. And when I started corporate training, I felt like I was really learning how to bring fundamentals, tools, principles right into that environment.
Right.
However, in that environment, you often find people that are there usually because right money or because
Right.
of it's a need. It's not really a desire. So I
Right.
wanted to step away from that environment and bring the tools that I've learned to entrepreneurs, smaller businesses, people that were driven by passion and missions, right, and purpose.
Right.
And so I connected with a friend of mine. Her name is Melinda King. She actually wrote a book. It's called Anchor to Your Strengths. And we decided to partner up about a year ago. And since then, we created ANKRPoint. And one of the biggest things that we had found individually, she actually lived in Europe for quite a few years, her husband actually worked for Gallup, her ex-husband. And one of the things that we had both kind of come across is we realized that one of the biggest problems with strengths is, like many things, that introduction into something, people feel all of a sudden that that dopamine hit, that excitement, but very quickly it fades because they don't know how to utilize the tool.
Right. Right.
And so that's what kind of inspired us to really kind of bring this idea of more of a networking environment, bring together entrepreneurs, bring together different partnerships that want to learn and develop what it looks like to actually utilize their strengths on a day-to-day basis. What does it
Right.
look like to show up each day in my themes and do my business and these things? And when you look at so much research now in terms of entrepreneurial success, the single greatest link to success is actually identity. It's not your strategy. It's not your goals. It's not even your framework or necessarily the hard work. It's actually identity. People that really get solid in who they are, what they do, and their unique talents dramatically see success in what they do. And so we wanted to really bring strengths, and identity and combine them and really bring to life what people can see in terms of success, joy, passion, raise people's, level of retention engagement. And it's been absolutely fun. So I've loved it.
Yeah, no, that's really great. I love that. The comment about identity, like, when you know who you are, you know where you're going, you can figure out what your purpose is like because I truly believe that God did not create redundant people. Nobody on earth is a carbon copy of anybody else. We are our own individual people. And if that's the case, then that means we have our own individual purpose. And if we don't know who we are and why we're here, then we're not going to be going anywhere in life, right? Like we have to
Yes.
figure out where we're going in order to figure out
Yeah.
where we're going.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
Right. Right. Okay. So, all right. So you were talking to me about your strengths identity operation system. Can you talk about that a little bit more? Like you were talking about how your wife took the test, your kids took the test. I mean, just kind of explain why it's good for family members around people to take the test and why people themselves should take the test. And then talk about strengths identity operation
Yeah.
system, all of that.
So, no, I appreciate that. So, one of the when you look at Gallup and when you look at statistically, right, the reason why people choose into specifically Gallup strengths is because number one, it identifies that people are actually 6 times more engaged in whatever role they're playing, right, regardless of the role. So, that measurable alone is one of the reasons why 90% of Fortune 500 companies actually use Gallup and utilize Clifton strengths to improve productivity, engagement, retention, that sort of thing. However, when you look at it from right, just kind of an everyday, right, everyday people in their home, a lot of the times people take it, but they don't really know how to utilize it or how to bring it to life.
Right.
And myself, I would say the single greatest thing that has come from me in my life when it comes time to Clifton Strengths is the impact that it's had on my relationships, my marriage, my kids. And it's because we go through life and my wife had been together for 26 years now. We took it right around our 20-year anniversary. And when we took that strengths assessment, up until that point, we've done couples retreats, we did different counseling things, we did all kinds of different stuff to kind of grow, develop, work together. But at no point was I able to read a report that gave me insight in her processing style, right? In how
Right.
she actually thinks. So we've had these experiences in life, right? Birthdays, holidays, cooking, cleaning, you name it, right? Why do you do this with the toothpaste? Why do you do that with that? And sometimes we don't really know why because we are just like what you said, we're not carbon copies of someone else, what drives us and motivates us. And so one of the single best things that strength taught me is the truth of it is I don't know. I have
Right.
no clue what it must be like. So we were talking about your husband earlier. To have deliberative at, number two for him, I
Right.
don't even know what that would feel like inside. For me, deliberative is in like bottom five. I can't even command, same thing is like in my bottom five. Yet for him, it's like number eight. I don't even know what that would feel like. So for
Right.
me to really know or process, even though maybe we were in the same business or went through the same experience. So for me, strengths when it came time to partnerships was the single greatest eye opener than anything else. My son, I'll give you a great example with my son. Now, my son, my oldest boy has Sheba at number one. Again, I have no clue what that must be like. But my youngest one has empathy at number one.
Oh boy.
And yeah, it was. And so I remember him growing up, he was always he was very emotional. He processed things differently. And in my home growing up, I grew up in a different kind of home, a very I'll give you something to cry about, or it was a different kind of environment. And so as my son was growing up, I didn't know how to manage the emotion. I honestly didn't. I don't have empathy high. My wife doesn't
No,
have empathy high. But
mine's not high either.
when my son took his assessment, it was in that moment that I thought, oh man, I have to parent him
Right.
totally different than I would parent my other son or anyone
Right.
else. And so when he took that, it gave me a set of tools or knowledge that totally changed my approach. And it was because of that that our relationship has dramatically changed with our son, because every strength, and this goes back into the you talked about the strengths identity operating system. There's 4 parts that when you look at someone's strength, any particular thing, number one is you need to know their processing style, the way they naturally think, feel, and behave. So
Right.
empathy and the way it processes. The second thing you need to know is how it contributes, right? What does it bring to the table? Because what it brings, in this case, empathy, it brings emotion, it brings expression, and if you don't support that or provide space for it, they can find themselves getting lost. And so you can't ask for someone to be productive or engaged or involved if you're not going to provide, right, that as a
Right.
parent. The third thing is a priority. Now, priorities are needs. And we all have needs. We talked about your husband and the right need for deliberative, learner, the need for new knowledge, woo, the need for new relationships, right? Positivity, the need for that. So there's needs in all of these. And then the last thing is where we misfire, where we go wrong. Because so often we look at it as like a character flaw, meaning, let's say, for example, his empathy, he's over emotional because he's turned it up. He doesn't know how to manage it. And so often when people don't know a strengths language, we may look at that as like, oh, bad kid, or
Oh,
doesn't know how
yeah.
to manage his emotions, instead of thinking, what's going on inside? And so it really teaches us 2 things. Number one is that it forces us to ask better questions. And instead of us saying, oh, why do you do that? Really, the question is, why do you do that? It
Right.
changes our
Yeah.
process. So when it comes time to relationships, like I said, from a retention and engagement, productivity, strengths is incredibly valuable. But if you really want to create depth in relationships, knowing their processing style, knowing how they contribute and what makes them more engaged, knowing what their needs and priorities are, and then knowing how they misfire or where they need to dial it back so it doesn't become a character flaw is critical. And so yeah,
Right.
so I would say probably the most passionate part is going to be the impact of relationships or the strengths involved and how you can create better relationships with it.
Right. And I love that like your son has high empathy because to somebody like you, me, my husband, your wife, like all of us, these people where empathy is pretty low on our lists, we look at somebody who's high in empathy and we're like, gosh alive, man, they make all their decisions based on emotions, on other people's emotions, on their own emotions. How do they live life? And somebody who's high in empathy looks at us and they're like, you're so cold. You're so like, why don't you let your emotions, like, why don't you think about it? I'm like, well, because my emotions cloud my decisions. I don't want my emotions to influence, and so I want especially listeners to recognize that just, a weakness does not mean your strength is a weakness. Like so me not being super emotional about my decisions, that is not a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
That is me how I'm built. And so it doesn't mean I'm cold and heartless. It just means I have a different approach. And same for me, like one of the things I've had to learn is that, I have a sister who's high in empathy. I'm positive she's never taken the Clifton test, but she's going to be high in very, very high in empathy. And she uses emotions all the time to make her decisions and to go through life. And that doesn't mean she's broken, and so and I'm like people like just recognizing that everybody, we all have different strengths and it's not wrong or right. It's just what works best for each of us and how we can strengthen our own strengths and work in a like under an operating system, like what you're saying, that actually works best for us.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Okay. Sorry, 100%. Okay, sorry. I'm like, next question.
100%.
Okay. All right. So, when you look back on your journey, what mindset shift made the biggest difference in your personal and business growth?
I again going back to what I just talked about, open to being wrong. That my perspective for and specifically in relationships or working with people isn't necessarily right or wrong. It's my experience, my strengths that are going to drive that thing. Now, framework needs to be in play, right? One of the
Right.
things that I've loved and I've watched entrepreneurship, the reason why corporate environments and specifically corporate training works is because people know where to clock in. Every day you go to work, you know where to clock in, you know where to clock out.
Right.
And you have, the daily tasks you got to do, the emails you got to send out. As entrepreneurs, though, they don't know how to clock in and clock out sometimes.
Right. Right.
We don't know. Wait, how am I going to get paid? Wait, am I going to get paid? You mean I did all that, not going to get paid, right? So part of what makes that successful is you need proper framework. You need really good foundational framework, And in order to do that, you got to be structured. You got to be structured
Right.
about your role. You got to be structured about expectations within that role. And then you got to be structured about what you bring to the table, meaning your strengths.
Right.
But once that happens, and you're going to involve yourself with business partners and relationships, and you're going to involve the people, you have to be open to the fact that, you know what, I don't know. That's the truth. I
Right.
can ask, I'd like to think I work with a lot of people. I've been working with a lot of people for years. I'm pretty good at, what someone would call reading people. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I really don't know what drives and motivates you unless I'm asking good enough questions and I'm seeing it on paper.
Right.
It's because we make so many assumptions up, and part of knowing that information is to eliminate those assumptions, to create better relationships, to
Right.
ask better questions. And so I really think that, getting the right information, collecting the right data, asking better questions, not just of ourselves, but of the people around us, is going to really give us more insight. And in being open to being wrong, being
Right.
open to realize, I don't know. And if you look at Benjamin Hardy, I love, Benjamin Hardy, Dan Sullivan. So they run a company by the name of Strategic Coach, the number one entrepreneurship coaching company in the world. And he wrote a couple different books. Who Not How, 10x is easier than
Oh,
doing.
yes. Okay. So I
Yeah,
know his
right?
books. I don't know his name.
Oh, that's okay. But a lot of the principles that they talked about is going to go back to the importance of, again, really finding yourself in what you do, and then asking good questions, because often we don't know. And if less we're willing to do that, we could be jumping based on our own needs, based on our own assumptions, and not really connecting in the way that we should to build successfully.
So how do you know what a good question is?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I think that, again, number one, so when you're working so identify the goal. Okay, so let's say you're the entrepreneur. Number one is you have to identify what you're trying to accomplish. Your achievement, you create some measurements, right? So let's say I want to accomplish X amount of dollars in a month, regardless of how you feel about money or not. That goal right there is a measurable goal, and within that goal, you can start to measure your output. You can start to measure what support you need, what ideas you need, what things you need. So you really need, and going back to your achiever, right? People with high achiever, that's easy for them.
Right.
People that don't have high achiever, setting a goal, oh, right, that can be a little bit difficult. Yeah. But that goes along with framework. You need good
Right.
framework to start measuring those things. Once you start creating that, then you can start asking yourself the question, oh, why didn't I show up to work today? Why didn't I accomplish these goals? And so we can, test, measure, and adjust. We can figure out, oh, I didn't get it. So then we can start asking better questions of what the real problem is. Too often we say, you're lazy, or you're this, or you're that, when we're really not asking the right questions.
Right.
It's not about laziness, because we're willing to invest all this other time in other things. The truth of it is, what, we're just not driven for that, or we didn't ask ourselves the right questions. We didn't give ourselves the right expectation. Does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense. And that actually, we were talking before we started about how my number one strength is focus. And before I learned, before I took the Clifton Strength test, I thought I was lazy. I actually thought I was lazy because I would get into this like, and I didn't know it was focus. I just, these blinders on and a tunnel vision, didn't notice anything around me. Nope, dishes are for another day. Laundry's for another day. I'm doing my project. And I honestly thought it was because I was being lazy. Like everybody does dishes every day. Everybody cleans every day. Why don't I do that? I'm
Yeah.
late. I must be lazy, right?
Yeah.
And so I took the Clifton Strengths test and I was horrified when I found out. Not horrified. I went into deep like mourning for 2 full days after seeing that focus was my number one, because one of the biggest things that people always say is, and this is funny because my first Clifton Strength coach always says question the premise, right? Like when people say write every day or you're not a writer, is that true or not? Well, for me, it's not true. Like I can sit down and write a full book from idea to ready for my editor in 2 weeks because of focus. I've also written over 85 books, so I'm much faster now, type over 200 words per minute. But I thought that I was broken. I thought there was something wrong with me because I'm like, I can sit down and I can pound, just like slam out a book in like 5 minutes, but I don't do dishes every day. And my husband does the dishes when I'm in the middle of tunnel vision, but I'm
Yeah.
phenomenal at really good deep cleaning projects. Like I can focus on that for days and just deep clean rooms in the whole house over, and get rid of all that stuff. But I can't, like when I get into focus mode, I really struggle with with being able to do other stuff. And so I went through like a mourning process when I found out that focus is my number one strength. And once I get in focus mode, I'm not going to be able to do all the other things. So I want you to talk to us about, because we were talking about this before we started recording, talk about how a person's number one strength dominates their lives under normal circumstances, and just kind of help me understand. Like, so my husband's number one strength is learner, yours is positivity, your wife's was
Strategic.
strategic, right? And she has woo, and then not positivity. What was it? I can't remember. Anyway,
So she has strategic, futuristic, and activator.
okay.
I have positivity, woo, and activator.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So how much does that number one strength dominate? And yeah, how can we keep it in a healthy place while still satisfying? Because I know if I don't allow my focus to take over, I am deeply unsatisfied and deeply unhappy and even depressed if I don't have a project that I'm working towards.
Yeah, I love it. This is a phenomenal question. So let's start from, looking at it in terms of weight, right?
Okay.
So when you take the strengths assessment, you have 177 questions that you're answering over the course of about 30 to 35 minutes or so, okay? You have 20 seconds to answer each question. Now, some of the questions you don't answer, right? Some of the questions don't get answered. Maybe you skip, maybe you move on. But the reason why they ask so many questions, because when you look at it statistically, the amount of questions you answer in a very specific way, correct, in the speed you answer it,
Right.
the amount of weight that defines, especially that first, second strength is dramatic.
Right.
Because that's really what drives you. It's who you are. And so because of that, it is going to dramatically influence everything you do. Now, when it comes time to, and you can see for yourself how this works, and we just talked about your focus, my positivity. I always describe it as this unquenchable thirst. it's
Right.
it's hard to describe the depth of my positivity, right? I mean, I could come home, the house is on fire, everything's great, and my response is, baby, it's going to be a-okay. That's literally how I see everything, and but that's the depth of that particular thing. Same thing with focus. It isn't about laziness, it isn't about not willing. It's about when you get into something that you really want, forget about it. It's lights out everywhere else, because, right, Andrea's got something to do. And so when we look at that, it really is, it's this need, it's this unquenchable thirst that we have to satisfy, whether if it's your learner or strategic, that sort of thing. So number one, we have to own it. We have to own it, as much as sometimes it hurts. We have to really own it. Now, when it comes time to the dialing of it, you have to understand that over the course of, I'm 47 years old, right? I took my strengths assessment when I was 40. I was married at the time for 20 years, had two kids. All that lifetime of, 4 decades, marriage, parenting, business, work, that's a lot of bad habits in a way that something still runs for me, positivity, right?
Right.
And so in order to get through a lot of that, I dialed that sucker up, right? And sometimes like too high. So I almost describe it this way. Think of it when you're like, in a race car track. And when you're on that straightaway and you're in that car, I can drive that positivity pedal to the metal. But if I'm about to take that corner, I better learn to let off the gas. Otherwise, I'm going to spin, crash out, right? Whatever. And that's what happens with your focus, my
Yeah.
positivity, my wife's strategic. We don't let up because we don't know how. And now we've run this positivity, this focus, this learner, boom, and we're spinning out of control. And now it's instead of being a strength or something that drives and motivates us, it's caused problems. And believe it or not, and again, maybe your husband can relate, but I would say one of the biggest wedges in my relationship was the fact my wife would come home, or I'm coming home, and I'm excited to come home. I'm going to see my wife and kids. And I was like, hey, babe, how was your day? And she'd want to maybe vent or talk about it the way it was. And the moment she did, I was like, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Turn that frown upside down. We're going to have a great day, right? That created a massive wedge, because I'm operating, right, on my positivity, and she's not being heard,
Right.
and not being and I'm not asking good questions, and I'm not caring. And so that thing that's supposed to be my number one strength is causing a massive wedge in our marriage. And so people don't know it. You don't know your empathy is causing the problem. You don't know your includer, your deliberative. And so learning about strengths isn't just learning about the impact that it has in your success, you're also have to be honest with yourself and ask better questions and say, how did it cost me, right? How did it affect that goal or that relationship or that thing? And I
Right.
think that that goes back to asking better questions to really take a look at measurables and say, okay, so if the measurable is to accomplish this in this 30 days, how did this take me and help me actually get there? Or how did this spin out of control and cost me time, money, energy, relationships? And so by identifying and asking better questions, we can really get better answers. Does that help? Does that answer?
No, that makes sense. And so, like, before I knew about focus being my number one strength, more often I defaulted into the I don't remember. I have a husband and kids and friends and family,
Yeah.
and but then once I learned that was my number one strength, I've struggled to allow myself to go there. And so
Yep.
the biggest issue I've had over the last 2 years is feeling safe enough, I guess you could say, to
Yes.
to delve into my number one strength and knowing I will come out again eventually and just hoping because I'm like that feeling that I am what's the word neglecting my
Yeah.
relationships around me. I
Yeah.
In order to delve into focus I need to be able to neglect for a short period of time, but I haven't allowed myself that that to relax, and so like in that case, like what would you, I mean, for somebody like for learner, my husband feels the same way about his learner. If he's not learning, he is unsatisfied and he's depressed, and for a while there he was not allowing himself to delve into that endless just information, so
Yeah.
for and I mean in the case of people like us, or where our number one strength can take us away from people that we love. Learner, he learns on his own. That's an individual thing. Focus, I tunnel. Like, what would you say in that case? Like, how can we allow ourselves to enjoy our number one strengths and not be so worried that it's going to take away from the relationships around us?
Love it. I love it. This is a beautiful question. So one of the things, if you think about it in terms of like, the bumpers in when you go bowling, you take the kids bowling and you put the little bumpers in the side rail so the bowling ball always stays inside, hit the pins. We need a number one is identify always what you're trying to accomplish. So have a goal. That's one of the biggest things that people need is a measurable goal that you're trying to reach or trying to accomplish so that your
Right.
strength has something to do. Our
Right.
strengths need the part of it is to engage it. We have to have something it's going to do. Okay, so that's number one. The second thing is that we need to realize that selfishly this is our need that you're fulfilling. You're fulfilling your focus. It's not your husband's, it's not your kids, it's not your business partners, it's yours. And so you have to make sure you build that framework to say, this is my time, this is my need. Because, and I'll just use my positivity as an example. You know how often I put that positivity on everyone else to make me happy? How unfair is that, right?
No, give an example. What do you mean? Put it on everybody else. Like, give an example for what you mean by that.
Sure, my wife, like I came home, right? And tough day at work, struggle. I'm like, man, you know what? I'm excited to get home. My wife's gonna pick me up. She's gonna make me feel because I need positivity.
Okay.
Walk in, it was a rough day with the kids, rough day for her at work, rough day. And now I have this wedge because she's not fulfilling, right, one of my needs. Same thing with maybe your husband's learner. It's his job to take time to learn, to carve out space to learn, to make sure that that book is a priority. But if he doesn't and turns to other people around him to provide him with that space, to give him permission without him giving himself permission, there is going to be some built up resentment towards other people. And there's going to be blame saying, you know why I don't learn? It's because of you. And it's because of you. And it's because of you. Or you know why I don't get things, my book read? It's because of, or book written because of you. And it's because of you. And so we put the responsibility onto other people to fulfill those key important parts. So building proper framework so that you identify the need in that strength. In this case, for your focused, you know and identify, all right, it's book time, it's writing time. And you negotiate. You say, all right, kids, here's what's going to happen. All right, hubby, here's what's going to happen. And you commit to that time for yourself, knowing that you're fulfilling something in that moment. The moment that thing is done, you got to be done. You have to make a deal with yourself and a commitment to yourself that I'm done with this. Now I'm going to engage in these other things. But when we don't do that and we allow that number one or that number two, that thing to just dial up, then we self betray, and
Right.
not just self betray in one area. So think of it in this way, and I always talk about this in terms of our number one, right? I talked about how much it influences us.
Hmm.
Almost think of it as like the top of the stair. So in the top of the stair, let's say you trip on your focus. In this case, you over focus. Now your communication is next. You're going to over communicate. Then your achiever's next. And now you just boom, 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 boom. You've tripped all the way down the stairs, and you've hit every single strength all along the way, and you've overplayed it, you've diminished it, you've underdone it, you've, exaggerated it, because the weight of that first one carries so much that once we stumble and fall, we're like a runaway freight train, right?
Right.
On these things that are natural drivers, natural needs, natural motivators. They're a core fundamental of who we are. So getting clarity, anchoring, really getting clear on your goal, getting your direction, getting clear on your role, getting clear on the expectations. And then you're saying, okay, I'm going to use my focus here. I'm going to use my communication here. That clarity will dramatically increase your ability to be successful. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. And you're kind of dancing around the word that we should use to define that. It's called boundaries.
Yes, it's 100% called boundaries.
And for someone like me who my like boundaries was a new thing, in adulthood, well into adulthood, I'm like, wait, I can say no to things, like, or I can choose to do things that was a new thing for me. And so I'm still struggling with setting my own boundaries, like I'm gonna focus, I'm gonna go do this project for this many hours. And my boundaries, I'm like, I haven't set that start and end time, and I need to do that, because if I can't say these are my hours, then my family can't respect that. My husband, my kids, if I say I don't want to be interrupted during these hours, then that gives me my ability to, like, because like the tunnel vision. When I tunnel vision, getting interrupted makes me just, I'm not a pleasant person.
Yeah, yeah, no, of course. Yeah. No, I can
And
totally relate.
right. And so setting the boundary with myself, so that I know that I'm going to be meeting that need, but also so that my family, they know that, that's a time when mom can't get interrupted. Now my 6-year-old, he struggles with that. Like
Of course, yeah.
he's he's one of those, he's got activator. We know he has activator 100%. There's no way he doesn't have activator. He's also got woo and communication, because like I'm positive, but he does not have harmony, which I don't know if you saw him, harmony number 6. He doesn't have harmony. He doesn't, it's not even close to his list of things. And so he will come and he's just like, we're doing this now. And we say no. He's like, why can't we do it? And I'm like,
As someone
okay.
that has harmony at number 34, I can relate to him.
And I'm like, what? You're upsetting the cart. Why are you upsetting the cart?
That's good. That's good.
Anyway. All right. So we've gotten through like 2 of our questions here. 3 of them. I've just been adding new. I'm loving this discussion so much. I'm gonna decide how much time we have left and how much time I want to put into the rest of the questions, because there's some in here that are really, really good, that you picked out. Okay. Let's see. Okay, we're just going to go with strengths again, because that's why you're here, right? Like, I want to talk about strengths and mindset and all of that. Okay, so how do you help someone turn their top strengths into real world results, especially when they feel stuck or overwhelmed despite knowing what their strengths are?
Oh my gosh, that is a great question. Number one, obviously, we got to start with the assessment, right? I think that that's where it starts. Gallup teaches, in your coaching program, they have kind of a step process in actually bringing to life your strengths. So number one is you have to get understanding. So many people will take the report and, like me, don't read it, right? You just don't read it.
Right.
And so they don't know what's actually in the report. And so for your viewership that have them, if you read your pages 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, that's actually customized information that most people don't know. I've done corporate trainings where people have had their strengths assessment for 5+ years. I tell them to pull out the report, to read their information, and they didn't even know it was customized. And so that by itself is a dramatic impact in people's real, because when they know it's customized, when you know, for example, that my activator number 3 is different than my wife's activator number 3, that's a big deal. I mean, that's a game changer. Same thing. So if you look at your number, your page number, so in your case 11, and your husband's page 11, and in your case, what, 3, 5, 7 for yours, and you read them, your achievers would both read differently because the surrounding strengths are what make that particular one unique. So
Right.
that's number one. People have to know that it's not a generic, you're not getting something that everyone else has. No, it's customized data and information. So that's number
Right.
one. The second thing that people need to realize is there has to become a level of awareness. And this is so often where people will, when you first take the report, there what you're seeing are talents. All you're seeing is motivators and drivers. That's all it is. Positivity is just a motivator and a driver. What turns it into a strength is when I actually use it to accomplish results, productivity, move
Right.
forward, build stronger relationships. Up until that point, it's just an influence. So you need to identify two things in your awareness: how it's worked for you and how it's held you back. That's the
Right.
truth. And if you're not willing to identify that, then all you're either in one area where you're saying you justify, well, I do this because of this, right?
Hmm.
Or you're in beat up mode and you go back to empathy. I've met so many people that had empathy at number one, and there was this beat up mode that they didn't know, they couldn't see the value in empathy. They only saw the pain in empathy.
Right.
They only saw the way it hurt them or frustrated them because they didn't realize it. It's just a natural motivator and driver. So you have to become aware of how it's brought you success in life, but also how it's held you back.
Right.
The third thing after you do that is you have to find a level of appreciation. You talked about this, your focus is that when you first took it, you're like, you're in strengths mourning because you're like, well, that stinks. Where's my positivity? Right? I got focused. I did that with belief. I have belief at number 12. We call it strengths envy. And I'm like, if I had belief higher, I would be way better, right? At like what I did or what I wanted to do. And so for a long time, it took me a while to find appreciation in my woo. I saw, as an example of my woo at number two, that showed me too much self-betrayal. I was like, I self-betrayed with that person. I won them over, but at what cost? And what did it pay? And so there was a mourning process for my woo, no doubt about it. And it wasn't overnight. I mean, it took like it was a process. It was like a year and a half where it took me a while to really heal from realizing this strength hurt me more than it helped me. However, it was such a driver and motivator in my life. So I had to learn how to appreciate it. And the fourth thing is then we can start to create application. So once we have understanding, we create awareness, we go into some level of appreciation. Now we can start applying. And what we want to do is we want to pick a goal. We want to identify the role. So let's say, for example, I want to lose, right, 30 pounds. If I want to lose 30 pounds and this is the goal, in order to do that, I need to identify the role as I'm the person that's going to do this, right? I'm going to lift the weights. I'm going to eat the food. I'm going to take the supplements, whatever I'm going to do. I start to define the expectations in that. And then I say, how am I going to use my focus to get that goal? Or how am I going to use my positivity to get that goal? And we start building framework and specifics where we link strengths to specific activities. And then it starts to reframe our brain as to, oh, this is how it worked, or this is what it looked like. So then we can start to actually give ourselves evidence of what actually a strength looks like or a talent looks like as we turn it into a strength.
I love that so much. Yeah, that's really, really great because like, I asked you if you knew who Bob Proctor was, right?
Yeah, yeah, yep.
Okay, so I love his system. You set the goal and it's got to be a goal that you don't know how to reach. And then, you have to build up your belief, which I don't even know where my belief is on the Strengths Finders test. But then I love that because that kind of puts things in like puzzle piece into place, like using my number one focus strength to reach my goal,
Yes.
or my husband using his number one learner strength to reach his goal. And I love that. What about people who don't have a lot of executing strengths, though?
Ooh, that's a good one, right? So I'll take even for myself. I have a ranger at number 10, and that's my first executing strength. So when I took the report, I'm like, great, I get nothing done. I'm lazy, right? I can't accomplish anything. I'm terrible.
Man.
Right? But what you need to identify is what you're looking at is no matter what the role is, once you define the expectations, it's about leaning your strengths into your expectations to make that happen. So I have people, for example, she is an absolutely phenomenal networker, very good, but she
Shia?
has no. Do what?
Did you say Shia? Somebody, a
No,
woman named.
no, I have a gal that I work with, a
Okay.
client. She
Okay.
has no executing strengths in her top 10, and she has her top five are just relationship building strengths.
Right.
But one of the things that she's so good at is doing things through people.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes you have to look at how your strengths are the how, right? The
Right.
what you do is has everything to do with the role. Meaning we could all be garbage men, right? We could all do a garden. We could all be parents. How we go about playing the role, though, the how is how our strengths link up to the activity.
Right.
So you don't need my positivity will do wonders to get right movement and energy going, where I
Right.
don't have to necessarily have focus or achiever to accomplish it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you have to really look at how your themes influence the engagement or influence that thing. I was working with a coach. He has no influencing strengths above 22. All of them are 22 below.
Oh
Yet
man.
he has a YouTube channel that had over 70 plus thousand subscribers. He was
Nice.
doing events with thousands of people. He does webinars with, again, thousands of people on his webinars, but no influencing strengths above 22.
Wow.
So because he was so good at what he did, he was so good at what he did that he utilized his strengths to move the people, right? To
Right. Right.
influence them, not saying, oh, I wish I had woo. I wish I had significance or command, because if I had those, then I could do it. Is
Right.
you really want to link up and identify what's the need in them? How do they bring value? How do they contribute? And then how do I connect what I do and how I do it to the results I want to experience?
That's really awesome. I love that so much because you're right. Like influencing is an executing strength if you're influencing other people to execute.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Oh, that's really great. Okay, so when you look back on your journey, what mindset shift made the biggest difference in your personal and business growth?
Oh man, again, I think that knowing, going back to what I said before, is that is learning to realize that I don't have all the answers, specifically to the relationships, to the environment, and I have to follow good framework. Everything that you've asked me in terms of questions, right? And this is what I love is always going back to identifying, who we are, what we do, how we do it, and then identifying within the framework of the goal, the role, the
Right.
expectations. And I think that that's one thing that I had to learn, and that's a skill. So that's one thing when you look at strengths. We'll take communication as an example. We both share communication.
Right.
And as a fellow communicator, we can identify that communication in a strengths perspective is all it says is means we're motivated by words, we're motivated to tell stories, we're motivated to talk, we're
Hmm.
motivated to write. That doesn't mean we're a good communicator. There's a difference
Right.
between a
Yeah.
talent and a skill, very
Right.
different. And I
Right.
had to learn the difference between the two, that this talent, which I'm good at, is going to be different than a skill. So I've had to learn to ask more questions,
Right.
learn when to slow down, learn when to speed up. And I've developed communication as a skill while it's still motivating as a talent. So the same thing is when it comes time to structure. If you look at my strengths, my structure is non-existent. I am
Right.
not a structured person. I don't, when you look at deliberative, when you look at other strengths that identify discipline, that identify good routines, achiever, right? These things, I don't have them. So I've had to learn that I need to develop the skill of good framework. So
Right.
whenever I'm talking, whenever I'm engaging, whenever I'm coaching, whenever I'm doing things, once you have good framework from a skill perspective, there's so much you can do. I can bring my woo. I can bring my
Right.
positivity. I could bring my activator. I don't need, like, going back to the executing strengths. Framework dramatically will change anything I'm trying to accomplish or the results that I want to accomplish, because it gives me the building blocks to do anything I want to do as long as I'm following those rules and those structures. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I love that again, that framework. Um, a system, a
Yeah.
system that you can put in place, habits that you can form and develop, and anybody can do those kinds of things. You can work within your personality and work within your strengths to develop the habits that will help you achieve things and help you, you know, get things done. What is your Myers-Briggs personality type, by the way?
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't know. I can't tell you. I have so many people that have asked me that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know. That's so funny.
Homework assignment number one.
Yes, yes. Myers-Briggs type. There we go.
I'm when I say I'm obsessed with personality tests, I'm obsessed with all of them. The only one that I haven't really gotten into is the Enneagram one.
Oh yeah.
But that one's huge for authors, and I was like, I don't know, Clifton Strengths did enough for me, and I'm an ESTJ on the Myers-Briggs,
Okay.
and I'm high drive on disc profile. And I just love all of them. They've all kind of pieced things in a little bit here and there, with Clifton Strengths
Mhm.
doing the most heavy lifting. But I love all of the different pieces because they help me understand, for example, so like ESTJ, that's my personality type, Myers-Briggs. ESTJ people tend to say no a lot, like to kids and to people around them, and like can I go play outside? My first response is no, or
Yeah.
I have to think. I'm like, have they done their chores? Have they? Well, then yes, the answer is yes. But my initial response, and I don't say it anymore, is no. Like, which is awful. Like that's a horrible thing, right? Like kids need to be said yes to occasionally.
Yes.
But like growing up the way I did, and ESTJ harmony, they have harmony, but most people with ESTJ, they don't. Harmony is minimal, and for me, it's like number six, right? But I
Yeah.
have overemphasized it significantly throughout my life, and so I am an ESTJ who struggles with conflict, and most ESTJ people do not struggle with conflict. And so I'm like recognizing the way my different strengths and the way my life and the experiences I've gone through have affected those different things has been incredibly valuable for me. It's given
Yeah.
me that framework,
Yeah.
to work within, to be able to structure my life.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Framework is probably one thing that I think that is so undervalued, especially as an entrepreneur, because we want to be creative. We want to be free. We let go of the 9 to 5 because we want it out of that environment. The problem is we don't create that structure, that framework for ourselves to be successful. And like, homeschooling your kids, there's a level of framework that drives creativity. With
Right.
no framework, sometimes things can be more chaotic, right?
Right.
I mean, so there's, whether you have a little bit or a lot, some level of it can dramatically increase the environment and drive for success.
Right, right. And kids naturally need routines and structure.
Sure.
I mean, even kids who aren't that way naturally, they need that predictability.
Sure.
You give it to them and it offers a sense of security to them so they don't feel like their life is falling apart around them.
Yeah.
Like they expect the adults in their lives to be adults, I guess.
Yeah. There's so many studies that are done around, kids, for example, in chores. You mentioned chores, that the impact of doing chores in the home early on in life will dramatically influence them in chores later on, or the house roles and the things that they do later on. And so it's that kind of framework that if we can learn how to implement in our own lives, especially as adults, that we have maybe some older habits or habits we're trying to change or patterns we're trying to let go of, creating that for ourselves and then adding our strengths as the layer to figure out where we're driving and we're more influenced for, whether if it's your focused or your learner, you
Right.
can find that level of engagement and almost excitement where it's like you're giddy. You're giddy to like, ooh, I get to do this with focus, or I get to do this with my learner type of thing.
Right, right. No, I love that. Love that. Okay, so what's one habit you practice regularly that most people underestimate but has made a huge difference for you?
Whew, anchoring. I would have to say this is probably one of the things that was I stumbled on it, to be honest with you, on accident. Now, as going to, being around self development, I've been around self development for years. I've always loved it. And, what most people consider classical conditioning is going to be vision boards, declarations, right?
Mhm.
That sort of thing.
Right,
And in terms of how it impacts our subconscious and that sort of thing. Well, when I was started strengths and I really started on this journey, I read a book by Melinda, who wrote the book, now my business partner, Anchoring to Your Strengths. I realized the power of, and she teaches it in the terms of power of scent and what it does to the brain, using, for example, things like Pavlov's dogs, right? And
right,
what happens just the moment they hear the bell, smell the food, right? Saliva, our chemical, our body takes over chemically and outpours this thing that we just naturally do. And that's one of the things that I've done with my own strengths is I read them. I have a story I tell myself in using strengths language. I set goals and identify, okay, how's this strength going to set up in this? Building affirmation, building stories. I use oils and then link to specific strengths. To before we started our our webinar, right? I'm like, ooh, okay, I'm going to be talking my communication. So it's these types of things that so often we let go of because we forget, and James Clear, that wrote, when you wrote about Atomic Habits,
Right.
one of the things that he demonstrated beautifully is in the earlier part of the book that so many people look over, right? They get locked into habit stacking and that sort of thing. But the introduction really of the process is to identify most people, or sorry, the people that have the most success aren't the ones that make goals based on results, meaning I want to lose 30 pounds. And so now they let that external goal, the results drive them. You see a dramatic, very, very few people actually achieve goals based on results. Then you have an inner circle where you identify strategy. You have people that implement strategy that have a higher increase of their goals and results. But actually, it's the people that are centered that incorporates the identity. Meaning, instead of saying I want to lose 30 pounds and you're going to do that, or I'm going to go to the gym and do that, you want to say I'm an athlete, and you commit to that language because it shapes your identity, which is going to shape your behavior, which is going to accomplish what you do. So your strengths, when you really look at them, anchoring identity of how you're focused, your communication, that's who you are.
Mhm.
And so the more you link up with that, the more you identify with that, the more you affirm that within inside you, that's when things really take off. And I would have to say, I've met a lot of strengths coaches over my years that have come and gone with different things. And one of the biggest differences are those that own them, like really, really, truly own them, or even people that have involved in the strengths, they see them every day and how they work and how they do. And it's because they've anchored such depth of it's part of who they are, it's part of their identity. And so I think that more people need to do that. They need to figure out, right? Ask better questions. Who am
Right.
I? What is my purpose? What is my goal? What do I want to accomplish? And then really link that up into what they want to actually do with it, and then make that connection.
Right, right. I love that. Um, let's see. Okay, so I've got two potential questions left, but I might not get to them because I want to actually give you a chance to. So like if somebody takes the Clifton strengths and they find what their top strengths are you the type I mean, I'm assuming the answer is yes. If they want to figure out what their purposes are, what their identity is, I mean, because the report is really great, but that's just it's really good, but it doesn't give that super in-depth into who that person is. I mean, it does, but it doesn't, if that makes sense. So
No.
you
Yeah.
can actually take people with their strengths and help them figure out what their purpose is, where they're going, that kind of stuff. I'm assuming, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, we've developed a process where we're asking really the right questions so that we're linking up your strengths. Again, your strengths don't determine what your mission, your purpose, how you're going to live this life, what God put you on this earth to do. They don't determine that. What they determine is how you're going to be the most successful at it.
Mhm.
So we could both be, right, totally different strengths. Same thing. You and your husband could be the exact same role, authors writing books, same amount of books, but how you're going to get your missions out there, the how, is dramatically influenced by those strengths. And so identifying and creating that clarity and that framework so your strengths beautifully fit in so they actually do what you want them to do is what we do. 100%.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so I told you earlier that I wanted to end the recording and then we would end the conversation. I'm actually just going to end the recording and then keep you on just to ask one more question
I love it.
that the listeners don't get to have. I'm such a
I
little
love
person. Actually, they won't want it. It's yeah, nuts and bolts question. Okay, so what beliefs did you have to unlearn in order to reach your current level of success? I think we've kind of answered that a little bit, but go ahead and just yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest beliefs is that I've realized is that these strengths that have always been in me, they've always been around me. I've had to really identify, number one, where they're actually contributing to my success and where they're contributing to failure. That awareness, I think the awareness piece is probably one of the greatest missing pieces that people often we ignore, because sometimes there's a lot of pain there, right?
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
see maybe your focus, maybe there's been a lot of resentment, there's a lot of pain, been a lot of struggle. People have identified the word lazy to it, and so we often don't dissect what really we're focused on, and
Right.
so we don't take that level of awareness. But I really think that if you're really going to do something with your strengths, if you're really going to do something with anything you want to do, a level of awareness of asking good questions and figuring that out can dramatically improve your engagement, your results, and your success.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's really great. The questions like, and again, some ideation's not very high for me. So sometimes for me, like I need people to give me words and then I can look at
Yeah,
them and pick which ones work for me. I don't generate. Don't ever ask me what's for dinner. I do not generate ideas. Like it's not something I do, but
yeah,
which is kind of crazy because like when I'm writing my books, like I have all the ideas I ever need. I have tons of creativity there, but
yeah.
anyway, yeah, I really love that. Just yeah, being able to figure out like the questions that you need to ask yourself and sometimes it does take somebody outside of you to ask questions as well, right?
Well, that's one of the reasons, quite frankly, why good coaches exist, is
Right.
because they sometimes, and you see this in marriages, right? If I were to ask my wife certain questions, she's going to relate that to maybe some past experiences that we might have had. She's like, "Why are you asking me that, Philip?" Right, kind of thing.
Right.
And so, and I'm sure you and your husband had those. However, outside of that, I have no emotional attachment to what you've done or what you haven't done. What
Right.
I have an attachment to is what you want to accomplish and how we're going to get you there. And
Right.
so, having great coaches or great people that are willing to support you and ask questions that sometimes are scary to ask ourselves, and then again, track that data. Don't be afraid to track it. That's something I don't have in my strengths. I don't. So that's a skill I've had to learn, where I say, okay, I want this. This is what I accomplished. So why didn't I go about doing it? What did I do on Monday? What did I
Right.
do on Tuesday? What did I do on Wednesday? And so I can start tracking, and then I realize, oh, well, that's because I didn't do what I was supposed to do, right? I didn't show up to work that day, right? Kind of thing. So when we start to really utilize skills in incorporating those things, we don't have to make it personal. It's not
Right.
about our feelings. It's not because we're lazy. It's not because
Right.
we're not good enough. It's not because we're not tall enough or smart enough or whatever. It's because we don't have structure. We don't have boundaries. We don't have environments that are created, that are built for us to be successful and thrive, not in necessarily, right, trying to create our dreams, but we're trying to connect what we're passionate about to how we do it so that we get the results that we want. And just so we just need to build better framework.
Right, right. No, I love that. I love that so much. And like you said, like a good coach, they're not emotionally attached to the situation, so they're able to have that separate that clinical look
Yeah.
while still loving their client, so it's not
Yes.
completely clinical, but they want good outcomes. I mean, they're in coaches coach because they want to help people become better and they
Yeah.
want to help people reach their goals. And so, and especially when they've got the education, the skills, and the background or the personality necessary to help people, like they can be quite powerful, in a person's life. And I love that you brought that up. And speaking of which, where can people find you? And if they want to work with you, all of that, go ahead and explain all of that.
Yeah, so you can find us ANKRPoint. So here's our little logo, and we spell it ANKR Point. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on YouTube. You can email us, anchorpoint@gmail.com. We're putting together a website right now. We actually do a networking event. We've been doing a networking event, free networking event in Lehigh. That we have. So it's super fun if you want to come and learn, connect with other entrepreneurs, strengths, that sort of thing. We're going to be starting another one in Provo as well. We got invited to work with a marketing group who is excited about what we bring, our uniqueness to environments and that sort of thing. And that'll be another free event where we're just connecting people and business, entrepreneurship, relationships, and how to bring their strengths to life. So it's not just something, it's not theoretical, right? We're not just talking about in terms of ideas, but we're helping people really connect the dots and bring it to life.
Okay, so networking event, is that a specific one-time thing? What's the information on that?
So we do that. So the one that we currently have is once a month, and we're doing it on the second Thursday of every month. Right now, it's in Lehigh at the WeWork building, right across the street from Travis Mountain. We're doing that one from 9:45 to 11, and you're able to
Wait,
come
wait,
in.
wait, hold on.
Oh, sorry.
I was telling him before we started recording, I'm like, he's like me, he gives information. I'm like, wait, I'm still way up here. Okay, you said the WeWork building.
WeWork building across the street from Traverse Mountain in Lehigh, and from 9:45 a.m., second Thursday of every month, 9:45 a.m. to 11 a.m. And
9:45 a.m. to 11 a.m. Okay.
to 11 a.m. Yeah, we'll do like a 15-minute kind of meet and greet. People can connect with each other, bring your strengths, bring some friends. People, we always do kind of a strengths introduction, and then we go into something, a specific topic. Last month, we talked about burnout and,
Nice.
burnout and capacity around, especially this time of the year, entrepreneurships, and how to limit that through identity and strengths. And so we always kind of bring a specific topic. The one that we'll be starting in Provo, we'll be emailing people on our emailing list, and so we always gather people's information when they come to our events. But we'll
Right.
start that up in February with a new one, and then we'll also be doing them on Zoom as well, for people that are outside of the state that want to, connect and kind of build strengths as well. So super exciting.
Right, and I don't actually know when I'm going to be releasing this episode. I'm recording a bunch of episodes to bank up a whole ton, and then so I can release on a set schedule. And so I'm hoping that this will be up in time for that first one in
Yeah,
January. You said
yeah.
the second Thursday of every month.
Second Thursday of every month, and if
But
not,
but
then we'll see them in February.
yeah, exactly, right? All right. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and end the recording now, and then you and I can chat a little bit after. But so for those who are listening, thank you so much for listening. Hit the like and the subscribe button and the bell icon to be alerted to future videos. Comment below. I'd love to hear your top strengths, and I'm sure that Philip would as well, because it's fascinating. I absolutely love the Clifton Strengths program and or the personality test, and it's super enlightening and really really awesome. It's just really great to get to know ourselves at that kind of a level with putting a word to why I am the way I am. So if you haven't taken it yet, take it. Philip, do you actually offer discounts? Because I know some companies they will have like a discount on the top five, and then if you unlock the full, I mean, do you offer things like that for people who work through you?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we can get you a discount if you message us directly as Gallup certified Gallup strengths coaches. We can offer a little discount for people, and then connect them to us and to other people, similar strengths and that sort of thing. So yeah, if you go through us, we can absolutely hook you up.
Okay, because people love discounts.
That they do. That they do.
All right. Well, thank you so much again, everyone, for listening, and I will talk to you all later. Oh, and thank you, Philip, so much for joining me.
100%. See ya.
Okay, we'll talk to you all later. Bye.